Hello everyone, and a very warm welcome back to the channel. This is another B2 level English listening and comprehension practice video. Thank you so much for tuning in. These videos are designed to give you ample opportunity to immerse yourself in spoken English at a slightly more advanced level than B1, helping you to not only improve your listening skills but also expand your vocabulary, understand more complex sentence structures, and get comfortable with native speech patterns and natural flow. As always, you can listen along passively, or you can actively challenge yourself to catch every word and phrase. Find what works best for your learning style. The more you listen, the more familiar the language will become, and the easier it will be to understand. So, for today's topic, we're going to dive into something that is a significant life change, a source of both incredible excitement and considerable challenge: living abroad. Yes, the experience of being an expatriate, or expat as it's commonly known. This is a subject I can speak about from personal experience, as I spent several years living as an expat in a different country. Because of this, I feel I can offer a pretty decent amount of insight into what the experience is really like, beyond the romanticized images you often see in movies or on social media. It's a multifaceted experience, and we'll explore both the incredible highs and the inevitable lows. Let's start by focusing on the positive aspects, the genuinely good things that come with making the bold decision to move your life to a foreign land. First and foremost, living abroad absolutely throws open a whole world of new experiences, ideas, and cultures. This isn't just a small window opening. It's like a massive set of double doors swinging wide into a universe you might previously have only read about or seen from a distance. You are no longer a tourist dipping your toes in the water. You are fully immersed in the daily rhythm of a different society. This isn't a 2-week vacation where everything is curated for visitors. This is real life in a different cultural context. You encounter different ways of thinking, different social norms, different historical perspectives, different foods, different forms of art, different humor. Things you took for granted back home are done completely differently, and vice versa. This constant exposure challenges your assumptions and broadens your understanding of humanity and the world in ways that simply traveling cannot achieve. You learn to be more adaptable, more patient, and more open-minded. You start to see your own culture from an external perspective, which can be incredibly illuminating and sometimes surprising. It gives you a deeper appreciation for both the uniqueness of your home culture and the shared aspects of human experience across borders. Your frame of reference for everything in life expands exponentially. And then there's that pivotal moment, the moment you step off the plane at your destination airport, and it sinks in, truly sinks in, that you're not just here for a holiday. You're here because this is your new home, for the foreseeable future at least. This realization can hit you with the force of a physical blow, like a truck, as the original script says. You might have spent months, maybe even years, planning this move. You've dealt with visas, packed your life into suitcases or shipping containers, said emotional goodbyes, researched the new country extensively. You might feel completely ready, perhaps even bursting with excitement and anticipation. But despite all that preparation, despite your strong desire to live in this new place, the sheer reality of it all, the weight of the decision and the unknown future, can suddenly strike you. It's the feeling of complete displacement, of being a stranger in a strange land, even if it's a place you dreamed of being. And yes, for many people, this moment, or these first few days and weeks, can definitely evoke a sense of fear. It's a formidable undertaking you've committed to. You've severed ties, at least geographically, with everything familiar and comfortable. However, and this is crucial, I agree with the idea that this fear is often a good kind of fear. It's not the paralyzing terror of danger, but rather an exhilarating, nervous energy. It's the feeling you get on the edge of a roller coaster before the drop, or standing backstage before a big performance. It's the fear that comes from stepping into the unknown, from taking a massive leap of faith. It's a fear intertwined with excitement, with anticipation, with the knowledge that you are about to embark on an incredible adventure that will change you. You've probably heard the common English expression, to have butterflies in your stomach. This is the feeling of nervous excitement, that fluttering sensation you get when you're anticipating something big or important. Well, the experience of arriving in your new country, knowing that you are going to build a new life for yourself there, finding a place to live, sorting out bureaucracy, finding your way around, starting a job or studies, making new friends. Yes, that will absolutely give you a serious case of the butterflies. In fact, as I said in the original script, sometimes it feels like something bigger than butterflies, maybe like giant moths flapping around inside you. But fundamentally, it's that same mix of nervous energy and thrilling possibility. And for me and for many expats, that feeling, while intense, is absolutely a positive sign. It means you're doing something significant and potentially life-changing. Another potentially huge positive about living abroad, especially if you've moved to a country with a different language, is the opportunity to learn that new language, or to significantly improve your skills if you already know some. Ideally, you would arrive in your new country with at least a foundational or decent level in the local language. If you've studied the basics, greetings, simple questions and answers, essential vocabulary, then being surrounded by native speakers provides an unparalleled environment for improvement. You hear the language constantly, on the street, in shops, on public transport, on TV and radio, in conversations. This constant exposure, combined with the necessity to use the language in real-life situations, buying groceries, asking for directions, talking to neighbors, accelerates your learning process dramatically. You pick up nuances, natural phrasing, slang, and pronunciation much more effectively than you ever could in a classroom setting alone. You learn by doing, by making mistakes, by listening intently. For people like me, who genuinely enjoy the process of learning and speaking foreign languages, this is one of the biggest rewards of living abroad. It's incredibly satisfying to gradually become more fluent, to be able to understand and participate more fully in conversations, to connect with people on a deeper level because you can speak their language. It opens doors, removes barriers, and allows you to integrate into society much more effectively. It's a key that unlocks so many experiences that remain hidden if you only speak your native tongue. However, and this is an important point to consider, as you can probably imagine, not everyone shares the same passion or gets the same inherent pleasure out of speaking a foreign language as dedicated language learners do. For some people, the necessity of learning and using a new language is a source of stress, frustration, and anxiety, not enjoyment. They might find it embarrassing to make mistakes, exhausting to constantly process a foreign language, or simply not be motivated by the linguistic challenge itself. For these individuals, the language barrier can feel like a significant negative aspect of living abroad. And honestly, based on my own experience and observing others, I personally know people who have lived in a foreign country for extended periods, 4, 5, 6 years, sometimes even longer, and they can barely construct a basic sentence in the local language. They might know isolated words or phrases, but they haven't reached a level where they can comfortably hold a simple conversation or handle everyday tasks independently in the local tongue. This often means their interactions remain limited. They rely heavily on other expats or English speakers, and they miss out on a deeper connection with the local culture and people. They navigate life through gestures, translation apps, and hoping that others speak their language. This can lead to feelings of isolation and can severely limit their ability to truly integrate and feel at home. Therefore, based on this observation and my own belief in its importance, my strong advice to anyone considering or planning to move abroad to a country with a different language is this: study the language as much as possible before you go. Get a head start. Learn the absolute basics: how to introduce yourself, ask for directions, order food, count, understand prices, recognize key signs, learn the pronunciation rules, get a grasp of the fundamental grammar. Why is this so crucial? Because if you arrive in your new country without knowing any of the language, the idea that you will simply pick it up through passive listening is, for most adults, largely a myth. It doesn't work like that efficiently. Without any framework or prior knowledge, all the talking you hear around you will, as I said before, often sound like nothing more than undifferentiated static noise in the background. It won't make sense to you. You won't be able to identify where words begin and end. You won't understand the context, and it won't effectively help you learn the language beyond perhaps picking up a few isolated words over a very long time. You need to have a base level, a foundation, where you can actually start to understand the message of what people are saying, even if you only catch fragments. You need to be able to recognize familiar words and grammatical structures when you hear them. Once you reach that point where the language begins to resolve from static into meaningful sound, then you can effectively go out into the real world and pick it up. Then your everyday interactions become valuable learning opportunities. Then, listening becomes practice, not just noise. Then you can start having those real conversations, understanding cultural nuances embedded in language, and truly have fun speaking that language and connecting with people in your new country. It transforms the experience from a constant linguistic struggle into an exciting journey of communication and discovery. All right, so we've talked about some of the significant positives, the expansion of your world, the thrilling challenge of arrival, and the potentially immense reward of learning a new language. Now, let's shift to the other side and address what is often considered the biggest negative, the most significant challenge about living abroad for an extended period. And this one, for most people, is indeed a no-brainer, meaning it's incredibly obvious and undeniable. The biggest negative is undoubtedly being far away from your loved ones, your family, your closest friends, perhaps your long-term partner if they didn't move with you. The emotional toll of physical distance from the people you care about most is profound and can be the hardest part of the entire experience. Moving across a large country can be challenging enough. You might be a plane flight away or a long drive, but you're still within the same national borders, often in the same time zone, speaking the same language, and travel is usually relatively straightforward and affordable. Moving to a completely different country, however, is a whole other level of difficulty when it comes to maintaining those close relationships. You're likely dealing with significant geographical distance, potentially vastly different time zones, different currencies, and often much higher costs and longer travel times for visits. A quick weekend trip to see family might become impossible. Spontaneous visits are usually out of the question. This means that seeing the people you love most becomes an event that requires significant planning, saving money for flights, and Coordinating schedules that might be out of sync due to time differences. You miss birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, spontaneous dinners, casual coffee chats, and just being physically present for the small everyday moments that make up so much of life in cement relationships. You miss being able to just pop over to your parents' house or meet a friend for a drink after a tough day at work, or be there in person if someone needs support. This feeling of missing out, of being geographically detached from the fabric of life back home, can be a persistent ache. Technology, thankfully, has made this much easier than it was in the past. Video calls, messaging apps, social media updates, these tools are invaluable for staying connected. Being able to video chat with your family and friends to see their faces, hear their voices, and share updates in real time is a lifeline. It definitely helps bridge the gap and makes the distance feel less insurmountable than when the only option was an expensive, infrequent phone call or slow letter. You can share photos and videos instantly, keeping each other updated on your daily lives in a way that wasn't possible before. However, and this is where the difficulty lies, while technology helps, it doesn't completely replicate physical presence. It's not quite the same as being with them in person. As I said in the original script, what do you think is the hardest part? It's the inability to have physical contact. You can see them, you can talk to them, you can hear them laugh, but you can't give them a hug. You can't hold their hand. You can't share a meal sitting across the table. You can't easily comfort someone physically if they're upset, or celebrate with a high five or a touch on the arm. That physical dimension of human connection is incredibly important, and its absence is, for many, the most difficult aspect of living far from loved ones. It's a constant reminder of the distance that separates you. This emotional challenge is something that many expats grapple with throughout their time abroad, and it requires conscious effort from everyone involved, both the expat and the loved ones back home, to maintain those bonds and make the most of the visits that are possible. Another significant negative aspect of living abroad, which relates closely to the cultural differences we discussed earlier, is the simple reality that there will always be certain things about the new country, its culture, its systems, or its people that you just don't like, or that you find frustrating, confusing, or difficult to accept. No country is perfect, and every place has its own set of challenges and quirks. When you move somewhere new, you trade the familiar set of problems you knew how to navigate back home for a completely new set of problems and differences that you have to learn to deal with. In my own experience as an expat, I felt that I was able to adapt to my new country pretty well overall. I was open to new experiences, tried to learn the language with effort, and made friends with both locals and other expats. However, despite my efforts to adapt and integrate, there were definitely some things that I just couldn't fully get used to, things that continued to be sources of frustration or confusion for me throughout my time there. The original script mentions low-quality infrastructure. This is a very real challenge in many parts of the world. This could mean poorly maintained roads with potholes everywhere, unreliable public transportation systems that are frequently late or overcrowded, power outages, slow or unreliable internet, service or issues with plumbing or waste disposal. These are not just cultural differences. They are practical challenges that can impact your daily life, make simple tasks difficult, and sometimes even feel unsafe or inconvenient compared to what you were used to. Dealing with constant minor logistical problems can be quite draining over time. Another example given was the lack of punctuality. This is a classic cultural difference that can be a source of significant friction for people coming from cultures where being on time is highly valued. In some countries, being on time might mean arriving anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour, or even more, after the agreed time. Appointments might start late, buses might not stick to the schedule, friends might show up whenever they feel like it. If you are someone who plans their time meticulously and values promptness, this can be incredibly frustrating. You might feel like your time isn't being respected. You can try to adapt by adjusting your own expectations and perhaps learning to be more flexible, but it can be a constant low-level source of stress if you're used to things running like clockwork. There are countless other minor things that can add up. This could include differences in customer service attitudes, how people queue or don't queue, noise levels in public spaces or residential areas, bureaucracy in dealing with government, offices, which can be incredibly slow, complex, and confusing in many places, different standards of cleanliness, different approaches to personal space in public, different rules about things like smoking or recycling, or even just different ways of communicating indirectly versus directly. These things aren't necessarily major problems on their own, but encountering them day after day, year after year, can be tiring. The advice here is absolutely to try to adapt as much as possible to your new country and its ways. Be open, be patient. Try to understand why things are done differently. Often there are historical, social, or economic reasons. Don't constantly compare everything negatively to how we do it back home. That mindset will only make you unhappy and create distance between you and the local culture. Try to find the positive aspects of the differences, or at least accept them as simply being different. However, it's also crucial to acknowledge that there will be some things that are just too different for you, or that are contrary to your core personality, values, or deeply ingrained habits. There might be social norms that make you feel uncomfortable, or ways of doing things that you fundamentally disagree with, or practical inconveniences that significantly impact your quality of life in a negative way that you just can't get past. For example, if you're someone who needs a lot of personal space and quiet, living in a culture that is very communal and loud might be a constant source of stress, regardless of how hard you try to adapt. If honesty and directness are very important to you, dealing with a culture that relies heavily on indirect communication and saving face might feel like a constant struggle. That is the reality of living abroad. It's a continuous process of navigation, adaptation, and negotiation, both with the external environment and with yourself. You learn a tremendous amount, you gain incredible experiences, you meet fascinating people, and you broaden your horizons immeasurably. But you also face significant challenges, miss your home and loved ones dearly, and have to confront and accept aspects of your new environment that you simply don't like or find difficult. It's rarely the non-stop, glamorous adventure depicted in movies. It's real life, with its own set of complexities, lived in a different setting. Ultimately, my years living abroad were some of the most formative and valuable of my life. The personal growth, the independence I gained, the new perspectives I acquired, and the memories I made are irreplaceable. It was challenging, absolutely, and there were times I felt lonely or frustrated or just plain homesick. But those difficulties were part of the journey, and overcoming them built resilience and self-reliance. It taught me so much about the world and about myself. It changed me in fundamental ways, for the better. The expat experience is a unique blend of excitement and difficulty, discovery and frustration, connection and isolation. It's about stepping outside your comfort zone in the most profound way possible and seeing how you navigate that. It's not for everyone, and that's perfectly fine. But for those who undertake it, the rewards, while sometimes hard-won, can be immense. Okay, I think that gives a much more detailed picture of living abroad, covering the exhilarating positives, the significant challenges, the complexities of language learning and cultural adaptation, and the emotional reality of distance from home. I hope listening to this extended discussion has been a valuable exercise for your B2 English comprehension. The key at this level is to be able to follow longer explanations, understand abstract concepts and nuances, and grasp details and examples. Now, I would love to hear from you. Sharing your own experiences and thoughts is a fantastic way to practice your English skills, both reading when you read other comments and writing when you leave your own. Have you ever lived abroad before? If so, what were the biggest positives and negatives for you? What did you find easiest or hardest to adapt to? Or perhaps you dream of living abroad? If so, where would you like to go and why? What aspects of the experience, both good and bad, do you think you would find most significant? Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I enjoy reading them and learning about your perspectives. Thank you once again for listening. Keep up the great work with your English studies. Consistency is key. I'll see you in the next video.